Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. The phenomenal Cutty Ranks is one of the greatest dancehall artists that we will ever see. He was one of the frontrunners and leading voices of the golden age of ragamuffin dancehall, which reached its peak in the 1990s. That epoch is loaded with titans like the great Super Cat, Buju Banton, Ninja Man, and arguably the decade's biggest star in Cutty Ranks. But when you really consider who exemplified the voice and the face of the ragamuffin DJ rude boy of the 1990s, Cutty Ranks always instinctively comes to mind as the avatar of those times. For those who rocked that era and listened to cassettes with mixes of the biggest raga songs can testify that Cutty Ranks tunes always formed a huge chunk of those compilations. His volume of work was so extensive that he is one of the most played raga toaster of all time. Aside from his incredible accomplishments as a musician, he's an inspirational figure whose life story would make for one amazing movie that shows the power of perseverance and a solid work ethic. He started out his life at the absolute bottom and over time evolved from a tough rude boy to one of the most respected elders in the dancehall reggae scene and a surprising opponent of slackness in modern day dancehall. Let's take a look at the incredible life and career of the great Cutty Ranks. He was born Philip Thomas on the 12th of February 1965 in Kingston in very tough circumstances. At just 3 months old, his mother abandoned him with an elderly couple in a town called Bernard in St. Mary Parish. This old couple didn't have children of their own and raised him like their own son. But young Philip was a very plucky and strong-headed child who was running in the streets and wasn't down with following the rules, and he would run away from home several times. He left home one last time and found his way to the rugged streets of Kingston. Once in the capital, he started doing all sorts of odd jobs to survive. He was homeless and slept rough in the streets, but he was a born hustler and sold oil and rice in downtown Kingston before getting his first real job as a butcher in a meat shop. It was there that he would acquire the nickname Cutty due to his day job cutting meat and a growing reputation for his short fuse and a tendency to get into fights at the slightest provocation. And his notoriety grew after running off a local gangster who had tried to extort protection money from his boss. It was this violent streak that would land him in trouble, but ironically steer him onto an entirely different life path. His boss at the meat shop assigned him the task of cleaning out the freezers and removing the huge blocks of ice. His hustler spirit had formulated a hustle, as those blocks of ice always had little pieces of frozen meat. He'd pry them out and send them over to a meat seller downtown who would sell them out of his shop. But week after week, the man would sell the meat and tell Cutty to come back later. One day, Cutty had had enough and confronted the man. When the man wouldn't budge, he whacked him over the head with a heavy rum bottle and knocked him unconscious on the spot with blood pouring out of his head. Terrified that he had killed the man, he fled the scene and made for the countryside, where he practically lived in the bushes for 2 months, evading the police. It was in those dark times that he found his life purpose. He drifted to a little town called King Weston in St. Andrew Parish and found work as a soundbox loader with 2 different sound systems, which by amazing coincidence were owned by the cousins of dancehall star Wendell Edwards, popularly known as Egyptian. It was while doing his job loading speakers that Cutty developed a love for DJing and would practice toasting every chance he could get. After a while, he thought it safe to return to Kingston, and after returning, he was relieved to hear that the man he had whacked over the head was still alive and well. But not long after, the police caught up with him and threw him in jail. But despite the obvious setback, it was during this time behind bars that he would hone his DJing skills in sound clashes with fellow inmates, which he won every time. He was eventually bailed out of jail by his boss, and after settling with the man he had almost killed, the case was thrown out of court. Once he was out, his sole focus in life became music. He practiced relentlessly and sought out opportunities to showcase his skills on various sound systems. He was taken on eventually by Gemini Sound, which was among the biggest sound systems in Jamaica. But despite his enthusiasm, he was restricted to loading speakers and got no time on the microphone. So he left Gemini and got a spot at Kilimanjaro, which was an even bigger outfit and boasted of heavy hitters like Early B and the legendary Super Cat. Not getting any chances there either, he moved back to Gemini, returning to a job loading speakers, and waited for his time. One day, he got fed up of waiting, and during an event, he dramatically grabbed the microphone and started toasting. The audience went keen on seeing a speaker loader getting on the microphone, and they showered him with stones and bottles and drove him off the stage, but he was far from finished. He retreated to the back, and after blazing through a huge spliff and 2 bottles of wine to charge him up, he went back on stage and grabbed the microphone again, and this time he fired his lyrics like missiles and drove the crowd wild, this time with ecstasy. His audacious act and great performance made him an overnight sensation, and his fame spread, winning tons of new fans for Gemini. Eventually, he left the sound system after they refused to pay him DJ's wages, but his reputation was already up and running and would soon get him his first big break. While hanging out one day, he was approached by dancehall artist and singer Cutty Ranks to take part in a DJ clash against Cosmic Force sound system, which had juggernauts like Papa San and General G. This event was to be held in Paisley, an area controlled by the PNP political party, so he formulated a plan to win the contest without necessarily going head-to-head with the 2 giants. He resorted to toasting lyrics that were pro-PNP and easily won the contest as the crowd roared in favor and declared him the winner. With that victory, his legend spread even more, and after working with different sound systems like Stereo Mars and Metro Media, he joined Arrow Sound System in 1986. In that same year, he would record his first single, The Outstanding Gunman Lyrics, produced by Winston Riley and released under his label Techniques Records. A sizzling and banging tune that is widely regarded as the first dancehall track about guns. He released a slew of stunning singles, all powered by his intimidating flow and powerful gruff voice, and was suddenly in high demand for plenty of shows overseas. After spending time in the US and working with Supercat and Nicodemus, he began to work with the Penthouse label, owned by producer Donovan Jermaine, in 1989. And one of the first songs that he worked on was the track The Bomber, which he was certain would be a hit, but Penthouse Records had no interest in that record. So like he had always done, Cutty Ranks took matters into his own hands and went to a studio and label right next door to Penthouse, which was called Shocking Vibes and owned by producer Patrick Robertson. And there he recorded Bomber again. And when it was released, it became a smash hit that moved Cutty Ranks from a star to a superstar. This act didn't go down well with Penthouse Records though, but they definitely got the message, and soon after released his track Pon Me Nozzle, which also became a huge hit. He caught the eye of London-based record label Fashion Records, and they released his debut album The Stopper in 1991, and this was followed by Lethal Weapon, which was released under Penthouse Records in the same year. Lethal Weapon was an absolute scorcher and a massive hit record that featured legends like Marcia Griffiths, Dennis Brown, and Beres Hammond. The album was a huge hit, but disagreements with Penthouse boss Donovan Jermaine put an end to their working and personal relationship. He went on to record his next album, From Your Heart, in 1992 under Priority Records, and this album featured bangers like Living Condition and You Coulda Deal, which featured Beres Hammond. From Your Heart was followed by his 1995 album 6 Million Ways to Die, which featured the fantastic track Ahu Se Me Don and 14 other wonderful songs. But one astonishing thing about Cutty Ranks' career is the large volume of quality releases. In between each album, he released amazing hit singles, and one of the most popular is Limb by Limb, which sampled lyrics and tune from the Peter Tosh song Burial. He took 5 years off after 6 Million Ways to Die and toured the globe heavily, doing shows all over the world before returning with his next albums, Back with a Vengeance in the year 2000, Hard for It in 2006, and Full Blast in 2012. One striking feature about his albums in the new millennium was a shift from the violent rude boy gunplay imagery of his early music to a more conscious and message-driven focus. Quite interesting considering the fact that he virtually opened the floodgates with his 1986 anthem Gunman Lyrics. But in recent times, he's not held back on criticisms leveled at newer dancehall artists, and even released a tune titled Wrong Mix, which was a diss track aimed at Bounty Killer and Beanie Man. He's also criticized the likes of Vybz Kartel for being a divisive figure who has always been willing to take his beef with fellow artists to the streets. He's maintained that in the old days, lyrical battles between rival DJs were always limited to the microphone and mostly done professionally. And on the flip side, Cutty Ranks continues to heap praise on the likes of Chronix and Kabaka Pyramid for their positive, message-driven music. Now in his late 50s and almost 4 decades into his career, he's still very active on the global touring circuit, and his music heavily engrafted into the consciousness of a new generation of dancehall fans, thanks to his huge and unforgettable catalogue of music and the endless samples and remixes of his voice by DJs and producers in Europe, the US, and Asia, in hip-hop, reggaeton, electronic dance music, and other genres. An undeniable 5-star general of dancehall. He's been busy putting out songs and collaborating with artists over the years from across the globe, and he keeps reminding us that he still possesses the powerful voice and fiery lyrics that made him one of the greatest forces of dancehall. I wouldn't be surprised if the man releases an album anytime soon that will shake up a dancehall scene badly in need of a reset. If anyone is qualified to do this, Cutty Ranks is definitely the guy. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.